RIT was the only university I applied to. I assumed I'd have a career in some form of art, but I had no idea until I got to RIT that there were things other than drawing pictures that could be classified as art. And that's when I found industrial design.
I think that she was given the freedom early in her life and through her education to develop her creativity and to be inquisitive and to ask a lot of questions.
I received probably the best gift any student graduating could have, and that was an invitation to come to New York City and work with Raymond Loewy, who was the father of industrial design, product design in the United States. I was very surprised to learn I was the only female, and there were 350 architects, designers, and engineers. And as the only woman on board to take care of product development and design, I had a voice that was not as common as the others in the room. And I was the one who would bravely raise my hand and say, well, what about people with arthritis? What about people who don't have feet to walk but use wheels to move? And what about? And I would constantly hear, Patty, we don't design for those people. And I didn't understand this hierarchy by design, that some people deserved good design and other people didn't. And I had no idea why it existed, but I knew in my heart of hearts we had to change it. I realized that I didn't want to just be an actress pretending to be an elder, but that what hadn't been accomplished, at least with the variable of age, was a true immersion character, an empathic character. So we developed all the prosthesis that would alter my body, give me curvature of the spine, take away my vision by using clouded lenses, plugging my ears so I couldn't really hear, and wearing non-operating hearing aids, taping my hands, my legs, using splints, so that I couldn't run, I couldn't bend, I couldn't raise my arms. I needed the support of people around me in the community to help me do the simplest of things, because I was living in this shell, a body changed by time. You could see this very sad distinction that exists in our world today because we did not design and build structures, services, places, spaces for the presence of elders and for people who do things differently than the norm.
She identified early in her career a need and a problem, and she structured a definite response to that need. And I think we're all very proud of that accomplishment, and I think that is something that really sticks out as a recognizable benchmark in her career, even though she's gone on and on and on far beyond that point.
I would hope, and I think it is true, that Patty's early education had something to do with her attitude and her values, and especially her respect for all people.
Universality just seemed to be the most sensible course of design in our eyes. What we were looking at was designing with equity, designing for all people as equal, and recognizing that there were not consumers we could call those people, but rather all of us have the same discrete and individual and unique needs and the same commonalities. One of the products I'm most proud of is the mammographic unit we designed so that when our breast is in compression, which is very painful, we have an automatic release once the x-ray has been completed. And so actually that's one of my proudest moments was fighting against, sadly, the men who were financing this project, who said that we didn't need to spend money on that detail. But I don't know if we'll ever be able to talk about this without embarrassing some people, but I suggested we could probably use some compression on their bodies, and that's what got me the budget. That's a very famous Patty Moore story. A more global story, of course, would be the OXO Good Grips products, and being part of the team with Smart Design, helping Sam Farber and Betsy Farber just take a look at such a simple, innocent daily practice of preparing your meal is the kind of thing that designers love to solve.
I use OXO Good Grips every morning, opening a can of dog food for my dog, and to think of Patty every morning, actually.
Design is supposed to empower people. It's not supposed to disable people. And the only time I even use the word disable is in chiding designers and saying, we didn't do a good job there, let's try again. People aren't disabled. Each of us has some level of capacity, some level of ability. Design is intended to meet that level and exceed it. And so it goes beyond compensation to thriving, not just surviving by design. So wherever there's a roadblock in our lives, it's because somebody didn't do their job right. And on that point, I'm adamant.
I think creativity is a God-given gift. I think using it is innovation.
Those of us who ideate about what life could be are often in a situation where some of the best ideas collect dust for a while until the right technology, the right materials, the right science is in place. And it's sometimes a wait-and-see game, but you're always building for what ifs and what about tomorrow and what could we possibly do. And we can do anything by design.